Never, ever rely on caffeine for energy because it's bad or something. But so good. You've noticed I'm struggling with my shoulder. And I'm moving it in every position I can, and I'm really working hard not to raise it out to the front in front of me, but that's exactly where it wants to go. Yeah, I was like, question? I have a question. The question is, why am I in so much pain? So I'm going to present naively to you some ideas about curing narcissism. Curing narcissism. Now, I should say before I begin, if it's narcissistic personality disorder, my rigid and dogmatic stance is that it is therapy-proof. It's a therapy-proof condition. But I'm going to present it to you as though I believe that it could be cured. There are certain key coordinates to narcissism that, were it curable, we would need to look at. And the reason for doing this with you is so you can get a better insight into what you're dealing with when you're dealing with narcissistic abuse and where it's coming from. If I draw here, can you see over there? Yes. Okay, so the first key coordinate that makes up the narcissistic worldview that we have to identify in order to try and get to some kind of a cure is splitting. Splitting. Splitting is a common defense mechanism against ambiguity and chaos. So if somebody's raised in an environment where there is an awful lot of ambiguity, there is an awful lot of chaos, their response to that would be to feel a lot of cognitive dissonance. So they make things altogether good and altogether bad. This is the essential component of the narcissistic worldview. So things are either altogether good, things, people, situations, institutions, or they are altogether bad. And there's no gray area in between the two. The reason why this happens is because the narcissistic child is raised in an environment by two parents who are giving them two contrary pieces of information. The parent is telling the child, or the environment. It could be a parent who has split themselves, or it could be two parents with contrary points of view, or it could be the household itself and outside the household. So they're getting two pieces of information. One, you are better than good. You are amazing. Everything you do is perfect. You can't do wrong for doing right. They're also simultaneously being told that they are awful, that they are the worst things imaginable. Now, it might be that they're being explicitly told that, or that it's being inferred through sexual, physical, emotional abuse and or neglect. So you are simultaneously awful. So the first coordinate we have to deal with is that the narcissistic personality disordered individual is splitting themselves and splitting the world and splitting the people in it. So I, as a narcissist, hold two separate superego injunctions. Neither of these is realistic, you notice. I'm not wonderful and amazing and godlike because I'm a child, and I'm not awful and terrible and demonic because I'm a child. This is where I would claim the break with reality comes from, and then we get the second important coordinate, which is delusion. A delusion that's so intense, I claim, it should be understood as a form of dissociative psychosis. It's ongoing. As the narcissistic personality disordered individual, in order to live, I am permanently dissociating from presented actual reality in the moment, altering it inside of my mind, and creating a new story, a new delusion at the same time. The third key coordinate is that it is grandiose. Why? Because I have these two battling introjects inside of me. One of them is saying that I'm amazing and wonderful, and the other one is saying that I am terrible and awful and worthless. So I'm constantly in an anxious state. There isn't a grandiose narcissist and a vulnerable narcissist. What I'm saying is that all narcissists cycle through grandiosity and vulnerability. When they cycle through vulnerability, it's because the bad superego injunction has taken over, it's activated. So there's a part of themselves that is now activated and switched on and said, you're not amazing. You are awful. You are terrible. My life as a narcissist is a constant, anxious battle to run away from any data that tells me I'm awful. There's no space here for me being normal. Just an average dude. Some stuff I do is good. Some stuff I do is not so good. It is either amazing and wonderful and special, or it is the worst thing you could possibly imagine. So I lean grandiosely into this, the delusion that I am amazing. I recruit people. I create scenarios. I coerce people. I manipulate situations to get as much of that feedback as possible. So I am creating my own false reality, gaslighting myself and telling myself that is reality. Does that make sense? The fourth coordinate is, in a sense, I am a missionary. I am an acolyte of a cult, of a religion. The cult, the religion is me. But is it me? Actually, it's not. It's the false self. The grandiose, delusional false self is a kind of primordial, destructive, evil God that demands human sacrifice. So inside of me, I have a devouring Moloch that needs human sacrifice. I'm going to be sacrificed unless I throw you into the fire first. So I'm a betrayer, I'm a liar, I'm duplicitous to continuously save myself moment to moment and daily from the bad superego injunction that's going to tell me I'm awful. If that takes over, it feels like death. It feels like total destruction to me. It's not just that I'm having a bad day. Those of you with CPTSD who have an inner critic, your inner critic fires up and you have a bit of a bad day, it really destroys me. It's really very, very painful and can create a total narcissistic collapse. So I have to fight damn hard to stay away from that. I can't risk it. I can't have an afternoon off. So the false self is there, constantly demanding more and more and more sacrifice. So it's actually very, very hard work for me to keep this going. The fifth coordinate is the mirror. The mirror. I am not ever, ever interacting with reality directly. I never see you. I was never seen. I was split. I was never seen. I was only seen through the mirror of other people's approval. That's how narcissism develops. So implicit in the mirror is an audience. I only have value in the eyes of mummy and daddy if there is an audience who applauds me and they get to bask in the reflected glory. Does that make sense? So I can't do reality directly. I can't love myself directly, and I'm not interested in loving you directly at all. It is meaningless to me. When you offer me love directly, I don't know what you're doing. And it makes me very, very uncomfortable. Darren mentioned the fear of intimacy. The fear of intimacy in that sense is a trigger along the lines that you are trying to relate to me in an adult-to-adult way. But then again, how many of you have tried to sit down and be like, come on, let's stop being silly. Let's sit down and make this right. Two adults in a room. We're on the same page, aren't we? Oh, yes, darling. Get back into the fire and be a good sacrificial lamb. So there's always this mirror element. I was never seen directly. I was only ever seen through a mirror, largely because one or both parents needed me to be an object of gratification for them. I do to you what was done to me. I instrumentalize you and objectify you because that was what was done to me. I was instrumentalized. I was objectified. I don't know what love is. So it is a loveless and intimacy averse condition that really doesn't allow or reward any kind of vulnerability or authenticity. I cannot afford authenticity. I cannot afford vulnerability. I will tell you I want love, and I will tell you that I love you, but I just know these are the words that human beings say to each other. I just need to lock you in place so I can sacrifice you tomorrow. Love itself is also instrumentalized, which is one of the many reasons why romantic narcissistically abusive relationships are very difficult to recover from, because you were abused, your trust was abused, and love and intimacy were abused. Love and intimacy were weaponized against you. Some of you are looking horrified. How wonderful. 3:30 in the afternoon, and I've generated horror. This makes me very happy. So it's Loveless. Inside of, this is the 7th coordinate, the false reality that the false self demands, where I'm going to protect myself, is the narcissistic shell. I live inside of a shell. I chose the shell as a child. The shell is the defense because I couldn't deal with the reality that I was faced with. It's not so much that I couldn't deal with the abuse. It's not so much that I couldn't deal with the trauma. As I said, emotional, sexual, psychological, or just plain neglect. That alone doesn't really force the child to create this shell that remains unbroken throughout the rest of their lives, the shell of delusion. It's the cognitive dissonance of being told two different things at the same time. So imagine all the stress and all the abuse wouldn't have caused me to break. It wasn't the stress of the abuse. That creates mental health disorders, it creates substance addiction, it creates avoidant attachment styles and schizoid patterns and so on, but not narcissism. You have to keep abusing me and telling me that I'm wonderful and amazing at the same time. That is how you drive me completely insane. That is your job. If you want to create a narcissistic child, you must have completely contradictory messages going in at the same time that the child's survival is dependent upon. I'm looking to you as a very, very small child to tell me who I am and to tell me what reality is. And this is what breaks me, is the split, a split between the two. I withdraw inside of the egg, the shell, and I say, reality is bad. Reality hurts. Reality sucks. It creates cognitive dissonance, which is, it's hard for an adult to deal with. You all know this because if you've been the victim of narcissistic abuse, the worst parts of narcissistic abuse syndrome are the cognitive dissonance. It's when the parts of you start to battle. He loves me. He doesn't love me. He definitely does love me, but do you remember how he hit me last weekend? And you're battling. It creates a tremendous amount of stress. A small infant has no means whatsoever to deal with that. They can't attend seminars on narcissism and read books. It doesn't mean anything to them. The gods in their life are asking them to be two contradictory things at the same time, and it creates a psychotic break with reality. The child withdraws into a shell. Inside of the shell, only the good superego injunction can survive. Any message that comes from the outside that is not aligned with the false self saying, you are amazing, you are wonderful, and you are special, they'll just deny it, they distort it, they delete it, they'll generalize it. And this is why you have so many conversations with them where you're trying to wrestle for truth. Does that resonate? You're wrestling for truth. This is what you said. This is what we agreed. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. Are they consciously aware that they're doing it? I'm not sure that they are, because the gaslighting of you is really only a part of the gaslighting of them. In order to relate to you, you have to enter the shell with them. You have to enter the shell with them. So you have to go into the crazy place with them. They internalize you. They're never talking to you. They're never actually interacting with you. They're only ever capable of interacting with an internalized object of you, which is, of course, fetishized, which is, of course, objectified and instrumentalized. And now I know the new term for that, a limerent object. It's a limerent object. You become a limerent object. You all saw Baby Reindeer? If you didn't, why not? It's terribly traumatic to watch. That is a story, at least in part, about limerent objects. The baby reindeer is the limerent object. So what happens is you get put inside of that world, and everything, every part of reality only exists in this matrix, the simulated reality, a delusional reality. Everything that doesn't align with that, distorted, deleted, or generalized, including data and feedback that criticizes them. You can put evidence in front of them of the wrongdoing they've made, and they can just ignore it. They'll just switch it off. Because I claim it's a powerfully psychotic personality disorder, but it also needs to be understood as heavily dissociative as well. and I'm not the only person saying this, if you go back to the old definitions of multiple personality disorder, not the ones for DID, the old ones that are now out of date, and you layer that onto what you see with narcissistic personality disorder, it matches quite well. Why? Well, because there's a false self. They are creating another person. They're creating another reality and then trying to force you and force themselves and force reality to sort of conform to those coordinates. This creates a strange situation. It means that if I am with you and I'm looking at you as a narcissist, the entire time I'm with you and looking at you, I have to create a representation, simulation inside of my mind of how I look to you through your eyes. Does that make sense? I'm never just looking at you. I look at you and then I split reality and I think, how am I looking through her eyes? And then I create another simulation, which is, as we sit here in this restaurant and I'm nodding along politely to your story and I'm wondering how amazing I look to you, I'm also wondering how I look to everybody else in the environment. Tiring. Takes a lot of psychological energy. They're frequently very, very stressed. They're frequently very, very anxious because this starts to break down. You can ask them questions to check if they're listening to you, and how do they respond? Irritation. They get angry. Why? Because they've already got like 5 browser tabs open at the same time doing 5 different tasks. That's why I'm saying it's dissociative, willingly dissociative, deliberately dissociative, and psychotic at the same time. How do you cure this? Well, you have beliefs that are behind all of this. So if the person is saying, I am altogether good, I am altogether bad, and they're splitting, you would have to, through therapeutic intervention, entrain them that some people and some situations and they themselves are just normal. They are not angels. They are not demons. They're just a normal person. The people who are around them, the relationships they've had, family members that they fell out with, institutions who betrayed them and stole their work and stole their ideas and all of this paranoid ideas of reference that they have, no, they didn't. These are just normal interactions between people. This, if they were entrained into it, would teach them to drop that sense of entitlement, because therapy would work that way, wouldn't it? Of course it would. You've got the delusional side of it. So the delusion is happening because they've internalized the idea, I am unsafe. They were unsafe when they were 2-3 years old. You would psychologically and through therapy seek to re-entrain them with the idea, you are now a potent adult and you have the power to operate in reality safely. You have potency, you have agency. Do you see how all of this is a disavowal of agency? They disavow responsibility. It's not me, it's you. Well, you can't ever have responsibility if you're living inside of this grandiose fantasy. It's not possible. So you give them back their potency, you give them back their agency, and with agency comes responsibility. Pick up the biggest burden you can and blah, 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 significance, etc. And then you have this grandiosity. Well, the grandiosity is only coming from the fact that they've chosen to live inside of a split reality. If you say there's no split, people aren't angels and demons. You are not an angel or a demon. You're just normal. You're just a person. That would slowly, over time, wear away at the grandiosity and the need for the delusion, because you don't need the egg if you are potent and have agency. You can just be a normal adult, sort of making their way through the world, however imperfectly. The false self is there as a protection. It's a protection against external reality, but it's also a protection against this evil, devouring, primordial, sacrificial god, Moloch. So you don't actually need a false self if you are not at risk of being eaten alive by some, evil, tell you what. The work around superego injunctions is incredibly important. It's important for them to recover from narcissistic personality disorder. It's essential for you if you've been the victim of narcissistic abuse. It is the most important thing you can do. Once you've internalized their Moloch, that Moloch will continue to devour you because you've created a false, what is it called? A shared fantasy between the two of you. This is the matrix that I refer to. Once that's been created, it doesn't stop when the relationship stops. It doesn't stop even if they die. It continues to play on, and this keeps speaking to you. What else would you do therapeutically? Ah, dear. Well, if they're living in a loveless, intimacy-averse environment where they're unique and where they're special and people are particularly evil or particularly good and the world's a very, very threatening place, once you've taken them through this process and you've said, no, actually, you know what it is? You can have vulnerability. You can have humility. What Darren said was a really key, important point before. There is arrogance with narcissism, but what is more important is the critical lack of humility. And that will be a predictor of long-term life outcomes. If you walk around with a critical lack of humility, you're fucked. You're fucked in the long term because reality is just going to chew you up. If you lack humility, you can't take negative feedback. If you can't take negative feedback, you can't change. If you're not taking negative feedback and not changing, you are not growing. You're remaining as a child. So you can do this work with them and you can convince them that there is a better world on the other side where they can be vulnerable, where they're enough. Don't have to perform for mummy and daddy anymore. You don't have to terrify people. You don't have to manipulate people. You can just show up because you're lovable as you are. You know, like some of us really like cats. Some of us really like dogs. They don't really do much. They just kind of look at you and be like, feed me, but we love them. Similar thing with some humans, you know, they're kind of lovable, they're kind of cute, some of them. You just show up and you're lovable. This is what should have happened to them in childhood, isn't it? Because we all love kids. You're genetically predisposed to think kids are cute if you are not deformed or, you know, have some, what is it? A genetic, what would that be if you didn't find children cute? Not deformed. Mutation, thank you. It would be a genetic mutation. You should be looking at kids as humans because, well, that's an adaptation for the species. If the parents die and we're in a tribe and you go, well, that's not my kid, you know, never mind. Sorry about that, little fella. Best of luck. Then you would be in ancient Sparta. So the vulnerability and the authenticity would be able to take over this system. But I said I was speaking naively. Why? Why? Do any of you have any idea what it is on there that stops therapy from getting through? The false self does. The false self stops the therapy from getting through. And the insistence on hiding inside of the egg shell of delusion because they always have. It's like clinging to a lifeboat. That's all they've ever known. And then we're saying, oh no, come and join the adult world. What's there? Well, you won't be special anymore and you'll have to queue with everyone else. That doesn't sound like much fun. That sounds like shit to me. I like being special. I like being clever. The only thing I've thought of, like, that would work if it were not for that. I think people with narcissistic traits, all of this that I just gave you will absolutely work for them. For people with MPD, all I need is 9 months and the waiving of their human rights so that I can completely control when they sleep, when they eat, and how many psychedelics I can give them. If you could break down those boundaries that were formed in childhood and there was something, then maybe, not now, I don't think we have the technology for it. Psychedelics produce too many unpredictable effects therapeutically, but you're probably aware MDMA, ketamine, that produces more predictable effects at very, very low doses. But maybe we will have the technology. And I do suspect psychedelics or drugs could be the way forward. If you could create the neuroplasticity in the subject, and I'm serious about the environmental control. I don't think this could be done by them going and living their normal narcissistic lives and then popping in for therapy twice a week. I do think it would have to be a completely immersive environment. Why? Because it comes from childhood. And childhood is the most immersive environment you can imagine. No credit cards, no car, you can't leave. You're stuck. So you have to put them through that experience again. This is a model, essentially, I'm sure those of you aware of CPTSD, it's a very complex post-traumatic stress disorder model. I'm suggesting complex post-traumatic stress is created the larger part of narcissistic personality disorder. And a lot of these resolutions on this side, they're coming from dealing with complex post-traumatic stress. That is the end of my talk. You may ask questions. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, hurrah. Quite. Any questions? You have a question. I'll come to you. I'll come to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fire away. Hold it to your mouth.
Okay. I was just wondering with flying monkeys.
Yeah.
Are there different types of flying monkeys like you would have narcissists? Because I've found that some of the flying monkeys can be very quite mean, and other ones seem to be like nicer people, but seem to be coerced into things. But I just wondered, are there different categories of flying monkeys, or do you know what they actually get from this as well?
I've thought about flying monkeys. If you're the target of a narcissistic smear campaign, as I have been by somebody who wrote the manual on narcissistic smear campaigns, when I looked at who was coming to me and repeating what the person said, I did try to categorize it, and my categorizations were not charitable. I was like, you must be very low IQ. Very low IQ, because if somebody's saying to you, I am a manipulator and I run smear campaigns, I have no friends, I hate having friends, and if you try to be friends with me, I'll destroy you ultimately, which he's said multiple times. You either have to be very, very low IQ, or you have to be acting in bad faith. So they're pretending that they believe the person's story, but they know full well that it's not the whole story. And in that bad faith, we could split it into two. It's kind of fun to be a flying monkey. It's fun to scapegoat. It's fun to stone the witch, stone the wizard. And also within that, there's previous resentment. Do they want you out anyway? Do they like kicking you? Maybe it's purely for sport, or maybe it's political. And then the other group, I thought, maybe it's a kind of like cult brainwashing. So if I say to you, I am abusive, I cannot have normal relationships with anybody, and ultimately it will end in me trying to destroy them. And then you see me do that, and you're going, well, the other guy or the other girl's they're probably evil. I'm saying they're evil. That's why the low IQ thing, which is what I said, is not very charitable, but are you dumb? Like, I'm telling you what I do. So I do think, I don't know what your experience was, but when I'm hearing stories about flying monkeys, it's typically enmeshed with smear campaigns. And I think we have to understand that, yes, people are getting something from it, but they are also at times in the thrall of a very powerful pathological personality. They might be a little bit weak as well themselves. And so they do it. I had a guy, this is a long time ago in 2010, it was in the martial arts scene, and he was a cop, he was a policeman, and he allowed himself to be instrumentalized and performed as a flying monkey, and then admitted to me that he'd done it. And he was like, no, he wrote me an email saying, I just went along with this because I'm a bit of a C word. And I'm like, okay, well, I suppose you're self-aware of what you're doing. Yeah. But I've never actually sat down and tried to categorize it, specific types of flying monkeys. But that would be my suggestion. It's it's slightly performative, the whole thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Because they seem to recruit the same sort of, like when you go to different schools, there's similar sort of different personalities in how people are. And that's, I found in different places I go. Say there is a certain person that is doing a smear campaign definitely, and it's all kind of invisible, but I know it's going on. And but yeah, the personalities. But some of them seem to be nice people, but they're doing really awful things. And you are your authentic, kind self to them.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to matter.
Yes.
Either, if you know what I mean.
No, it doesn't.
And I thought, surely you've seen. I'm not perfect, absolutely. On the other hand, I'm not. So that's what I find bizarre. Whereas some of them definitely are complete lunatics as well. I know that for sure.
Yeah, some people I think are just very empty, and when they seem nice, it's just that you haven't seen them across enough context yet. Nice can just be conformity. They're probably spineless. They don't have the courage to be evil and to be sadistic normally. And some people are spiteful mutants, are they not? Yes. That's his word. Do you like that? That's a Duttonism, spiteful mutants. Sorry, yes, I did say you could.
Is there any research if it's possible to hypnotize a person with NPD? Because theoretically, if it was possible, then you can do regression, you can go back to the early childhood, change their experience. So if it was possible, theoretically, it shall be possible also to cure them.
Yeah. So I'm trained in hypnotherapy. It's a pretty blunt instrument. They can be hypnotized, but it's not. It's not like
working.
You have total control over somebody's mind.
I am aware I'm trained as well, but I just wonder if there is any research in particular with people with NPD, or they just refuse to go, because if they don't want to change, then it will be like, forget it. I'm not even going to try.
Well, if you could trick them, you could say, we'll make you an even better narcissist. You just have to submit to the hypnosis.
This is a total...
Well, it would be tricky, right? You do a hypnosis work with people. It'd be difficult, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Was there another hand that went? Yes. Thank you. Oh, my shoulder. Oh, God.
So I just have a question with the split, I guess, all the way back to the start, where they have they're all amazing or they're all bad. So if you try and talk to them and they perceive that as criticism or whatever, and they then start saying to you, you're saying this, you're saying I'm all bad, right?
Yeah, they could do that, or they could say, oh, well, I'm just awful.
Oh, both
so
of
it's
those.
both splitting.
Both
it's
of
still
those
splitting
happen.
defense, yeah.
Okay, so then at that point, if you try to come back to this and be like, no, like you're just a human being. You're just like everyone else. You're just made a mistake, whatever. Why do they hold on to that negative one so badly? Like literally go back to it and demand that what I'm saying is the negative thing. Like they can't.
I can answer you as a narcissist.
If they're okay.
So how would you ask me the question as a narcissist? How would you? You suddenly went glassy-eyed. I'm not really a narcissist. We're just...
No, I know.
Oh, shit. I always suspected,
I'm like, where
and now
do
I know.
Start?
It's a rabbit in the headlights there. No, we just pretend. So imagine we're having the argument and you're trying to take me there. What would you ask me? Because I'm clinging to this, you said.
Mm-hmm.
What do you
You're
want to ask
clinging
me?
into the perception that I'm criticizing you, and then I would say...
You are.
But then I would say something...
You just criticized me.
Yeah.
Go on. Sparring, you're safe. Practice. Go on, you go.
You're worse than him.
You are criticized. You always criticize me. I don't know. Nothing I do is good enough. Don't go glassy-eyed. Stay here. Nothing I do is good enough. You're always like this. Oh my God, you're going to go to a flashback. Okay, stop. That's a terrible exercise. No, it's the reason... Your bottom lip is trembling. The reason why is because I can't stand the criticism. I can't stand the negative feedback.
But why hang on to it then? If I come back to you and say, no, it's not that you are wrong or bad. It's just, I see it differently. My experience is differently than yours.
Can I answer as a narcissist again?
Yeah.
Okay. And I won't answer the way at the surface level, but internally. So you're in control of this interaction. Are you telling me what I am and what I'm not? You don't do that. You're food. My cheeseburger don't talk to me. Okay? You go in Moloch's mouth tomorrow. What are you saying to me? You're going to tell me something about me again? You're going to analyze me? Feel it? Mm-hmm. It's horrible, right? I can't let you call the context. Do you remember at the beginning of the day, I was like, the phone, the Instagram, the like all the tech, all the culture is through a context that's narcissistic psychopathy. You're having a go at the context. You're trying to pull me here. I don't consent to that. What are you doing? We're playing with a power dynamic here. I tell you what's real. I tell you who you are and who I am. So what were you saying? So you were reasonably saying, why are you holding on to this? Why are you holding on to drama? Why are you holding on to conflict, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's mine. It's mine. You're in my world.
But it doesn't work.
Well, are you saying my world doesn't work?
Well, I am to you.
I can actually feel like the temperature of the room go, oh, shit. Narcissistic rage. Yeah. You saying my world don't work?
Yeah, I guess I am.
We should do some self-defense trolls on this. I think I should put them on YouTube. No, I mean, the defiance is healthy. You should be able to say, no, your world doesn't work. Look, nobody likes you. So are you saying my world doesn't work? Say, nobody likes you. Say it. Nobody likes you.
I couldn't say that because then the rage gets so big that I can't. Then the rage is so big it takes the whole room up, and then I'm crying.
And that impacts how you feel. But okay, so can you see how what the problem is here for us as codependents, as the receivers of this? We make it about them and they're powerful, but actually what's making them powerful is that we can't deal with our feelings predominantly. Do you get that? Because if you could, if I stand here and temper tantrum, I mean, if I'm going to attack you, it's a police job. I'm a grown, I'm like, it's funny. My ex used to do that to me, but I had to go to therapy to the point where I could just sit there and be like, wow, what is she actually really going to do? But before the therapy, it was like, oh, this is just like my mom. And if my mom doesn't love me and my father doesn't, it's like terror, anxious. That's an emotional flashback. Once I got through that, I was just in a room with a 35-year-old woman child who couldn't control her emotions. And she would spit and scream and swear. And I'd be like, go ahead. It's all good.
I get hung up in that I must be miscommunicating.
Yes, because of the codependency. So you're blaming you. So now I, as the narcissist, and you, as the codependent, playing the same game because you're wrong, right?
Well, yeah, because
we
he
agree
tells
about
me
that.
I have tone, or
well, you're a bad person. Though.
Oh, Jesus! Can someone else take it? I don't like it.
No, I can see where you're coming from. I feel it because I've been there and I've sat there and I'm like, okay, so why? Like, I would literally be like, well, how could something so bad happen to a good person? So I must be a piece of shit. And then she'd be like, yeah, you are. And I go, okay, well, we're in alignment then. And then the relationship continues because we both agree on that core value, like, I'm worthless. And she'd be like, yeah, you're worthless. She sent me to therapy, which is the funniest thing. A nice guy from Dublin, I only did 6 weeks with him, snapped me right out of it because he would just laugh at me. He'd be like, and sure, and why are you doing that? I'm like, well, because, I don't know. It's like, aren't you an expert on narcissism? I'm like, fuck yes, God damn it. And that was it. If you find your sense of humor, sense of humor will drag you back into potency and agency because you're not a child anymore. Yes. You do have a credit card in the car. Yes. You can leave. The illusion, it's like the Wizard of Oz. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. He wants you to believe all this stuff that you're carrying still from childhood. And it's, thank God, it's not true. But it's there's probably a few tears to be shed there. Would you agree? Yeah. So there's some things there that do have to be processed in terms of finding the agency.
This is sort of a linked scenario. A friend of mine who's
I'm sorry for that Irish accent.
No, don't you worry.
Apologize.
No. And they were going into a narcissistic rage with an ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
I was there at the time, and I felt really disempowered. I didn't know what to do. I thought, I'll challenge them. I said, you need to stop effing doing this because you're making a complete so-and-so of yourself, and you've been really nasty and cruel, etc. And they got worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
How can you manage that?
You have to go to the target because this is a system.
Yeah.
So I'm the narcissist. So I'm screaming at my girlfriend, and you kick in. Well, now that's just another target. But I'm ready. But
I mean, at one point he said, "Oh, you're all picking on me." There was somebody else there as well. You're all picking on me, and then they played the victim.
Yeah. Because
is that common? Yeah.
You're in my playbook now. Yeah. I have all of the strategies that make me right, even though I'm clearly being an arsehole.
And everything that their view of the world is black and white, and up is down and down is up, and it's like, your head's spinning.
Yeah, you in that situation, if it was me, I'd be trying to contact the target. Once
that's what I did.
The episode in the drama, you can't win unless you give them a right hook, right across the jaw. No, don't do. I'm joking. Don't do that. I'll come back to you in a second. There was a hand went up over here. No. Yes.
So, from my understanding, why would a narcissist want to change if they think they're perfect? So,
exactly.
Most of the people that have NPD won't change.
No.
But is it possible to?
If we give them the drugs.
Is it possible to be in a relationship and not get totally mad being with a narcissistic? No. It's not. Thank you.
We'll go crazy. Go on, give it to.
Well, I was going to say that if a a woman has, for example, borderline personality disorder, or which crosses over, as you said, substantially with narcissism, or a man has narcissistic traits, there is some evidence that certain kinds of antidepressant, certain kinds of SSRI, can calm down many of the symptoms, because of a fundamental component to certainly borderline personality and to some extent narcissism can be anxiety. And so it suppresses the intensity of the anxiety. So that's one way. But then interestingly, you might meet a narcissist that will say something like, well, it's my anxiety that is behind why I'm so creative and wonderful and amazing, and therefore I can't possibly take antidepressants because then it will dull my ability to be creative. Yeah. And there is actually some truth in that. And there was a playwright called Sarah Kane, and she committed suicide at age 28 in 1998. And she was a very famous playwright, and she found that when she was she wanted to find this optimum space between being so depressed she wanted to kill herself. So then they put her on antidepressants, and then her art wouldn't be as raw and she wouldn't be as motivated to produce her art. So they take her off the antidepressants, and there'd be this period of lucidity, then she becomes too depressed again, and eventually she hanged herself. Yeah. So there is such an evidence that creativity is associated with neuroticism.
Any other questions before we take a break? Yeah.
I just wanted to carry on. I had very similar question. Like the main reason they cannot be cured is because they don't want to change. Yeah. What would be something to make them want to change? Like mortification or any type of particular experience which would make the narcissist want to change? Religious enlightenment, very strong psychedelic experience, near-death experience. Okay. Something that is a world, when I say world, I mean the map of the world, world-altering. And even then, it's very powerful. It's very, very powerful. It's their relationship with reality at core. So I would not be hopeful. So even if they wanted, do you think potentially someone with NPD wanted to change, would it be possible to reverse all the childhood experience and get out of the reason why? Is there an example of someone who was cured? So I have an answer for you. The reason why I cited like a religious born-again experience, near-death experience, or very intense psychedelic experience is because of the neuroplasticity it generates. Wanting to change, my humble opinion, and I may be wrong, I'm very rigid on this. I'm very dogmatic about it. My therapist is always going on at me about it. Just wanting to change is not enough. Okay. This is entrained. The neural pathways are laid down from childhood, and they practice it all day, every day. This is why I was thinking about hypnotherapy and the regression. It's not enough. It's too blunt. It's too blunt. What I said half jokingly, I genuinely believe is the only way, because we have to have them in an immersive experience where they lose all control, all human rights, just like childhood. And it needs to go on for, I would say, minimum 9 months, because it's a re-entrainment of the neural networks. The spontaneous response under any pressure is dissociate and psychosis. And I should have said, it's driven by anxiety. So they're incredibly anxious people to begin with because they feel unsafe. No, they feel massively unsafe. Is there anyone you are aware of ever who was, let's say, cured from NPD? No, I know people who claim to have created a cure for NPD and that they themselves have not changed one iota. So there is no hope. No. Abandon hope, all ye who enter here.
Wanted to address that. What was your name again? Jail. I keep thinking about when we ask, like, why don't they let go? The thing is, it's their identity. So asking them to do anything else, the alternative is death, and they don't want death. It's so much their identity. It's not like you might have an identity and you can be this way or you can be that way, and perhaps you're fluid. You have neuroplasticity in terms of like, who I am is something deeper and I can be this person, I can be that person. They don't have those thoughts. They're just that person. So you're asking them to die. So that's why it feels so fucking impossible.
Yeah, so rigid, so rigid. Jacob, are there any questions in the chat? Oh, for the Q&A for everybody. Okay, well, let's take a 10-minute break. Please come back in at 5:05. And then the last 50 minutes, we'll do a group Q&A with all of us, and you can ask us any questions. Well done, everybody. Go and smoke and then come back.